What if the future of a royal bloodline hinged on a single, explosive question? Are Archie and Lilibet truly King Charles's grandchildren? Tonight, shocking revelations from a confidential royal investigation have rocked the palace to its core. Doubts about the paternity of Archie and Lilibet forced King Charles to take an unprecedented step, removing them from the line of inheritance. This isn't just family drama. It threatens the very legacy of the British monarchy. We'll uncover what led to this explosive decision, the heavy price Meghan Markle allegedly paid, and what this means for the future of the crown. Stay with us as the royal saga unfolds like never before. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What does it take to break a prince? That question, blunt, arresting, and without ceremonial, has echoed across media outlets, royal commentators' desks, and late-night group chats following the publication of a brutally honest U.S. column in which Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, was unceremoniously dubbed a beta male in a scathing critique tied to his appearance on the Time magazine cover. The article went viral almost instantly, not just for its biting tone, but for what many interpreted as a painful truth, that Harry, once the bold, mischievous royal rebel, had somehow morphed into a man many no longer recognized, at least not as the prince they once admired. The phrase beta male wasn't tossed lightly. In fact, it seemed surgically chosen, intended to wound. It emerged as the defining term used by the columnist to describe Harry's current public persona: quiet, withdrawn, reactive rather than proactive, and, worst of all for a royal bloodline built on ancient notions of stoicism and command, dependent. It painted a picture of a man eclipsed by fame, by marriage, and perhaps by his own emotional demons. And in the hours following the article's circulation, the world did what it always does: it chose sides. Was the piece unfair character assassination? Or was it a brutal but necessary commentary on how far the prince had fallen? For Harry, the storm was immediate and relentless. Sources close to the Sussex camp reportedly described the moment he read the headline as gutting, while others say it wasn't the first time the Duke had heard the term whispered behind closed doors. This, however, was different. This time, it was plastered across international news, embedded in think pieces, dissected on podcasts, and memed across social media. Millions read it, millions debated it, and millions more wondered, was it true? This is where our story begins. Not just with a magazine cover or a column, but with the unraveling of a man who once walked the world stage with an infectious smile and a devil-may-care attitude. A man who once wore a Nazi costume to a party and survived the fallout. A man who served in Afghanistan, gunned down Taliban operatives from an Apache helicopter, and called it just a job. A man who was once Britain's favorite royal, the charming, cheeky younger brother of a future king. So what changed? What truly pushed Harry from beloved rogue prince to emotionally frail outsider? Was it Meghan Markle? Was it the weight of royal expectations? Or was it something deeper, something broken long ago, perhaps during his mother's funeral procession, as he walked silently behind Princess Diana's coffin while the world watched in sorrow? As we journey through this story, you'll see how a single phrase, beta male, opened up a Pandora's box of buried insecurities, public backlash, and private heartbreak. But this video isn't just about Harry's emotional spiral. It's about power, perception, legacy, and a man trapped between two worlds. A man who thought he could leave the crown behind, only to discover the shadow of royalty never truly disappears. Let's rewind the clock for a moment. When Harry and Meghan graced the cover of Time magazine, it was supposed to be a win. After all, the feature labeled them among the 100 most influential people in the world, a staggering accolade for a couple who had stepped down from their royal duties and reinvented themselves in the sunny hills of Montecito. The cover image itself was symbolic. Harry stood behind Meghan, hands lightly resting on her shoulders, while she gazed directly into the camera with quiet intensity. He, meanwhile, looked subdued, almost deferential. To their fans, the image was powerful, an emblem of partnership and shared purpose. To their critics, it was confirmation of an unflattering narrative, that Harry had lost his spark, his voice, and perhaps even his dignity in the orbit of his wife's commanding presence. The columnist in question didn't mince words, describing the image as a visual thesis on submission and branding the Duke's positioning as one that reeks of beta male optics. The term ignited controversy across the globe. Commentators, psychologists, sociologists, and former Palisades all weighed in. Some argued that Harry was simply a modern man unafraid of showing deference and emotional vulnerability. Others, especially within more conservative media circles, saw it as evidence that he had lost the masculine dominance expected of a royal prince. Online, the image was memed ruthlessly, doctored with captions mocking his manhood, edited to depict him with leashes or photoshopped tears. It was no longer just about a cover. It had become a referendum on Harry's very identity. And while Meghan seemed unfazed, gracefully continuing her public appearances, making phone calls on behalf of charitable causes, and attending glitzy galas, Harry was reportedly devastated. Insiders close to the couple described a sudden withdrawal, an emotional downturn that saw him cancel meetings, skip engagements, and spend long hours behind closed doors. One source claimed he hadn't taken the article well, stating, "It touched a nerve deeply." It was the culmination of months, even years, of attacks on his character. But this label, it stuck. Why did this article hurt more than the others? Why did this particular critique cut deeper than the years of press scrutiny, the accusations of hypocrisy over climate activism and private jets, or even the backlash from the infamous Oprah interview? The answer, perhaps, lies in the fact that it wasn't about policy or principle, it was personal. It wasn't about Harry's decisions, but about his very essence as a man. And in an age where masculinity is constantly being redefined, questioned, and reframed, being dubbed a beta in front of millions wasn't just a jab, it was an existential blow. It resurrected old wounds. Remember, Harry's emotional struggles are well documented. He's been candid about his mental health journey, revealing in interviews that he suffered panic attacks, anxiety, and deep resentment following his mother's death. For years, he buried those feelings beneath a mask of bravado, army tours, wild nights, and public laughter. But beneath it all, there was always pain. Unprocessed, unresolved, and largely ignored by the institution he served. This article, in a way, ripped off that mask. For all his royal titles, global fame, and Hollywood connections, Harry is still a human being, one whose life has been marked by loss, pressure, and relentless scrutiny. To be labeled a beta male wasn't just an insult. It was a cruel reminder that no matter how far he ran from Buckingham Palace, no matter how loudly he denounced the press or reclaimed his narrative, the world still felt entitled to define him. And yet, here lies the paradox. While the article brought him emotional crisis, it also forced a reckoning. A moment of deep introspection. Was the label fair? Has Harry truly become what the media says he is? Or is he simply a man daring to be different, one who chose love, family, and mental health over outdated ideals of male dominance? This is where the real story begins. Not with a magazine cover or a biting headline, but with a man on the edge, grappling with his past, questioning his future, and confronting a world that refuses to let him escape his royal shadow. The emotional crisis sparked by a single word, beta, has revealed more than just Harry's vulnerabilities. It has exposed the delicate balance between modern masculinity and public expectation, between personal evolution and societal ridicule. So, if you think you know Prince Harry, think again. Because over the next chapters, we're going to unravel the emotional, political, and psychological threads that have brought him to this breaking point. We'll examine how the label was weaponized, how it amplified old wounds, and what it tells us about the world we live in today, a world that praises vulnerability in theory, but punishes it in practice. What happens next is not just a story about a prince. It's a story about identity, about resilience, and about whether a man can truly reclaim his voice in a world determined to silence it. Are you ready to find out? Long before the words beta male were ever used to describe Prince Harry in the brutal column that would ignite a media firestorm, the foundation of that label was already being laid. It started quietly, almost imperceptibly, as part of the ongoing metamorphosis of Harry from warrior prince to family man in exile. The seeds were sown during his exit from royal life, cultivated in his public appearances, and then harvested, harshly, in the form of a vicious narrative. To understand the gravity of that insult, and why it caused such a deep emotional rupture, one has to rewind to when the media's fascination with Harry began to shift from adoration to scrutiny. Once upon a time, Harry was the darling of the British public, while his brother, Prince William, embodied duty, tradition, and the weight of monarchy. Harry was the carefree spare. He was relatable, cheeky, flawed, and human. Tabloid headlines followed his escapades with equal parts admiration and alarm. There were stories of drunken nights out, wild costume parties, and daring military missions. But all of it fed into the image of a real man, brash, unfiltered, perhaps reckless, but authentic. That version of Harry started to erode not when he met Meghan Markle, as many would later claim, but when he began to openly reject the emotional repression so deeply ingrained in the British royal system. In his first interview speaking about mental health, he admitted to seeking therapy, to struggling with unresolved trauma, and to experiencing panic attacks in his 20s. While progressive circles applauded him, the undercurrent of criticism also began to build. A prince airing his psychological wounds in public? It was unheard of. It challenged not only royal protocol but centuries of masculine archetypes. And that made some people uncomfortable. Then came the moment that changed everything, the royal exit. In January 2020, Harry and Meghan announced their intention to step back from their senior royal duties. The decision stunned the world and sparked months of media frenzy. While the couple cited toxic press coverage, lack of support, and a desire for financial independence, the public's reaction quickly bifurcated into camps. Supporters heralded it as a brave stand against institutional rigidity and racism. Detractors saw it as betrayal and abandonment of duty and tradition. But one narrative quickly took hold and began to shape how Harry was perceived in nearly every subsequent appearance, that he had been led away by his wife. It was an idea perpetuated by royal insiders, talk show pundits, and online forums, that Meghan was the dominant force and Harry the follower. That she had the plan, and he simply obeyed. The term whipped began to appear more frequently in headlines and tweets. And while couched in humor, these words were laced with accusation and emasculation. That narrative solidified further during their interview with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021. While both Harry and Meghan spoke candidly about their struggles, it was Meghan who appeared to command the narrative. She was calm, articulate, and composed. Harry, on the other hand, appeared tense, unsure at times, as if weighing every word. Critics latched onto this contrast. Suddenly, the Duke of Sussex was being described in increasingly feminized terms: emotional, sensitive, dependent. He was no longer the fiery redhead who took no prisoners. He was Meghan's husband. That became his new identity. By the time the Time magazine cover appeared in September 2021, the public perception of Harry had already tilted dramatically. The image they chose, Harry standing slightly behind Meghan, dressed in black while she wore a striking white suit, became symbolic. In it, Meghan exuded power. Harry looked like support staff. It was meant to convey partnership, but it reinforced a lingering suspicion among critics that Harry was no longer the protagonist of his own story. Then came the column. Published in a prominent U.S. outlet, the writer didn't just criticize the cover. He dissected it. The column's central thesis was that the photo was a deliberate visual cue reinforcing Harry's supposed subordination. It referred to the image as a masterclass in passive positioning, with the columnist arguing that never before has a royal prince looked more like an accessory. And then came the three words that detonated across the internet: beta male energy. The phrase had been used before, mostly in dark corners of the internet and fringe commentary, but never had it been so mainstream, so public, and so brutal. The columnist didn't stop there. He claimed that Harry had allowed himself to become a symbol of male obsolescence, and that in trying to champion emotional vulnerability, he had inadvertently rendered himself powerless. To many, the argument was thinly veiled misogyny. To others, it was a necessary critique of shifting gender roles. For Harry, the impact was devastating. According to insiders, he read the piece within hours of its publication. The reaction was immediate. One staffer who spoke under the condition of anonymity described it as a breaking point. Harry reportedly retreated from his usual morning routine. His meetings were canceled. He barely spoke to staff. He stayed out of sight for nearly a full day. Meghan, for her part, attempted to calm the storm, reportedly telling him that they'd endured worse. But this time, something had pierced through the emotional armor he had spent years building. The word beta had unlocked something dangerous, something tied to identity and manhood. It wasn't about politics or policy anymore. It was about his worth as a man, as a father, as a son of a monarchy that has always lionized strength above all else. And worse, it came from America, the very place where Harry had sought refuge. The betrayal felt complete. But why did that specific word beta have such power? Because it represented more than just internet slang. It carried with it a philosophy, one rooted in toxic masculinity, archaic hierarchies, and the presumption that sensitivity is synonymous with weakness. The idea that being emotionally open, following a partner's lead, or expressing vulnerability makes one less of a man is not just wrong, it's dangerous. And yet, in the echo chambers of modern media, it's a belief system that still holds sway. For Harry, who had fought so hard to redefine himself beyond the institution of the crown, beyond the scars of childhood trauma, and beyond the oppressive gaze of the tabloid press, being branded with such a regressive label felt like erasure. Erasure of his battles, his growth, his pain. It reduced his life to a caricature, a man who gave up his throne for a woman, only to become her shadow. As the days passed, the article's impact only grew. The phrase trended globally. Memes flooded the internet. Talk shows debated whether Harry was still royal material. The Daily Mail ran a story on how the cover photo symbolized the end of traditional masculinity. Fox News aired a segment questioning whether Harry had abandoned British values for Hollywood feminism. Even former royal aides chimed in, anonymously feeding the narrative that Harry was no longer the same man they once knew. Behind the scenes, there was concern for his well-being. Harry has long struggled with emotional health, and those closest to him knew this wasn't just a headline. It was a trigger. Friends tried reaching out. Therapists were consulted. Meghan reportedly asked their PR team to shift the narrative quickly, pushing news stories about the couple's charitable work. But the damage was done. This moment, this phrase, had become the centerpiece of Harry's emotional undoing. And it wasn't isolated. It was cumulative. Years of ridicule, attacks, and public humiliation had built to this point. The beta male label was simply the final straw. It made Harry question everything. His choices, his image, his voice. He began second-guessing his interviews. He grew more guarded with friends. According to sources, even his relationship with Meghan became strained, not out of resentment, but from the sheer weight of public perception pressing down on him. He had left the royal family to find peace. Instead, he had become a target, not just of tabloids, but of ideological wars about masculinity, family, and power. The very society he had hoped would embrace his vulnerability was now using it to define him as weak. And yet, in that very crisis, lies the next phase of Harry's journey. Because for all the pain and public dissection, something else began to stir quietly, but undeniably. A growing chorus of support. Celebrities, activists, psychologists, and even soldiers who had once served with him began to speak up. They defended his evolution, praised his courage, and denounced the idea that a man must dominate to be worthy of respect. In podcasts, commentaries, and social media threads, a counter-narrative emerged that Harry wasn't a beta male, he was a man in transition. A man redefining what it means to be royal, to be male, and to be human. But the storm was far from over. The label may have started as a column, but it quickly became a cultural flashpoint. One that would demand answers, ignite backlash, and set the stage for Harry's next move. Would he retreat further into silence, letting others define his image? Or would he rise, not in anger, but with a new kind of strength, quiet, firm, and unshakable? As the media frenzy surrounding the beta male label reached a fever pitch, what the public couldn't see was the emotional unraveling that occurred behind the doors of Prince Harry's Montecito home. The public image, polished, curated, tempered, remained intact. But within the walls of that multi-million-dollar mansion, the Duke of Sussex was confronting a storm far more vicious than any newspaper headline or television panel could capture. The public ridiculed him, commentators dismissed him, and online trolls feasted on his supposed humiliation. But few considered the psychological wreckage that followed. Friends closest to Harry described a man who looked like he had lost the floor beneath him. He became withdrawn, avoided social calls, and even canceled a virtual appearance that had been planned for a veterans charity, an event he had helped initiate. That cancellation sent quiet shockwaves through his inner circle. For Harry, duty to fellow servicemen had always been sacred. To back away from that without explanation, it meant something was very wrong. In the days that followed the release of the article labeling him a beta male, Harry reportedly struggled with intense emotional swings. Sources within the Sussex's media team later disclosed that he had asked for all scheduled press activity to be paused. He was tired of being mocked, tired of being misinterpreted, tired of having his manhood debated by strangers who had never known the weight he carried. The irony was cruel. The very openness he had once championed about mental health now became the ammunition used against him. Inside the house, Those who saw him said he had lost the gleam in his eye that had once defined his public charm. He was, in Meghan's words to a close friend, sinking into himself. It wasn't depression in the clinical sense, but something more layered, a grief over what had become of his name, his masculinity, and his purpose. He told one friend that he felt like he no longer recognized the man in the mirror. "I don't know who I am outside of all this noise," he reportedly confided. His relationship with Meghan, while still strong, began to bear the pressure, not in the form of arguments or recriminations, but through the slow accumulation of silence. They would sit together for hours, neither speaking much. Meghan tried to offer comfort, but Harry seemed unreachable. He wasn't angry at her, nor did he blame her. But the very foundation of his crisis, his manhood being questioned, wasn't something anyone else could fully fix. Not even the woman who loved him. One source familiar with the couple's inner dynamics noted that Harry, in his lowest moments, began second-guessing every major decision he had made since leaving the royal family. Had he done the right thing by stepping down? Was he wrong to believe the world would accept his vulnerability as strength? Had he overestimated his ability to craft a new identity? These weren't passing doubts. They became constant echoes in his head, disrupting sleep and clouding his judgment. Meghan, concerned about his well-being, reportedly reached out to one of the therapists who had helped Harry in the past. Private sessions were scheduled, away from the public eye, but even those were met with resistance. Harry had spent years encouraging others to seek help, to speak their truths. But now that he was in the depths of his own crisis, the idea of confronting it head-on seemed impossible. He was haunted by the sense that no matter what he did, tell the truth, do good, be open, it would be weaponized. Adding to his torment was the behavior of the British tabloid press, which, sensing vulnerability, went on the offensive. Pundits mocked his reaction to the article, claiming he was proving the columnist's point. Radio hosts aired segments where they parroted Harry's supposed hypersensitivity. One even went so far as to suggest that he should have stayed in the army if he wanted to feel like a man. It was brutal, relentless, and calculated. Amid the chaos, the Sussex's communications team scrambled to regain control of the narrative. They issued no official statement, opting instead to quietly amplify stories about Harry's charitable work, his military service, and his advocacy. But the algorithms favored drama. The positive stories gained little traction compared to the avalanche of ridicule. Every attempt to move the conversation forward was buried under snide comments, memes, and cynical op-eds. One particularly cruel meme that went viral showed a split image. On one side, a photo of Harry in military fatigues in Afghanistan. On the other, a recent photo of him walking hand-in-hand with Meghan in California. The caption read, "From warrior to handbag." It was cheap, crude, and devastatingly effective. Harry saw it, and it stuck with him. What added salt to the wound was the deafening silence from the royal family. No word from Buckingham Palace. No public statement of support. No gesture of solidarity. For Harry, it was yet another reminder of how thoroughly he had been exiled, not just geographically, but emotionally. He wasn't simply outside the palace walls. He was alone. The silence from his brother, Prince William, was particularly painful. While their relationship had long been strained, Harry had still hoped for some private outreach. But nothing came. Not a text. Not a call. In interviews following their royal exit, Harry had often said that time heals all wounds. But in this moment, as the world dissected his masculinity with brutal efficiency, time seemed to stand still. The distance between him and his brother felt like a chasm too wide to ever cross again. One late evening, according to sources close to the household, Harry went for a walk alone, something he rarely did without security. He left without telling staff, slipping out through a side gate and disappearing into the Montecito dusk. Meghan panicked when she realized he was gone. He returned nearly 2 hours later, quiet, eyes red, not from tears, but from sheer exhaustion. When asked where he'd gone, he simply said, "I needed to feel the ground." It was a striking phrase, raw, honest, almost poetic. In those 6 words, Harry captured the essence of his crisis. He needed to reconnect with something real, something unfiltered by judgment or narrative. Just soil, trees, air. Something that didn't question his strength or manhood. Something that didn't label him. In the days that followed, a subtle shift occurred. Not a dramatic transformation, but the first hints of renewal. Harry resumed his therapy sessions. He began reading again books on identity, masculinity, and healing. He wrote in a journal each morning, attempting to make sense of his inner chaos. Meghan, ever supportive, gave him space but stayed close. Their children became his anchor. Time with Archie and Lilibet reminded him of the roles that no headline could take away: father, husband, protector. One day, while watching his son build a tower out of wooden blocks, Harry reportedly said aloud, almost to himself, "I'm still building." Meghan, who overheard, said nothing, but later told a friend it was the first time in weeks she felt like Harry was coming back to her, not just physically, but spiritually. Meanwhile, allies began to emerge. A handful of veterans issued a public letter defending Harry's character and leadership. A renowned psychologist penned an essay deconstructing the harmful implications of labeling someone a beta male. Even a few celebrities, including Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans, made veiled references to the importance of redefining masculinity. Slowly, a counter-narrative began to grow. Not because Harry demanded it, but because people recognized the cruelty of what had happened. Still, the scars remained. Harry would never be the same. He had seen what the world was capable of, how quickly admiration could turn into derision, how thin the line was between being respected and being ridiculed. But perhaps that realization, as painful as it was, became the crucible from which a new kind of strength could emerge. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. He didn't need to fight every headline or respond to every insult. He just needed to live with truth, clarity, and a quiet kind of power that didn't require validation from the outside world. But first, he had to get up from the floor. After the storm of ridicule and emotional turmoil, Prince Harry's eventual return to public life was not marked by grand gestures or flashy headlines. It was quiet, measured, and deeply intentional. A rebirth not of a prince reclaiming his crown, but of a man embracing his truth amid chaos and criticism. This was a moment shaped not by the need to prove himself, but by the raw power of vulnerability and authenticity. The months following his withdrawal from public appearances were spent in near-complete isolation from the media spotlight. Harry retreated further into his personal life, focusing on healing and reflection. His decision to step back was strategic, allowing him to rebuild from the inside out. Unlike before, when he had sought external validation through public statements and media interviews, this time he sought internal validation, a foundation that could withstand the harshest storms. His first public step back was carefully choreographed but felt organic. Instead of an interview or an official announcement, Harry chose a documentary about veteran mental health to quietly associate his name with. It was a project close to his heart, one that connected to his identity beyond the royal narrative. The public initially met this with mixed emotions, some cautiously optimistic, others skeptical. But this was not a performance designed to sway opinion. It was a declaration of priorities. In a particularly poignant scene of the documentary, Harry speaks candidly about the pressures of public life, the struggles of being misunderstood, and the need for compassion, not just for others, but for oneself. He doesn't paint himself as a victim or hero. Instead, he conveys the complexity of his experience with humility and honesty. The effect was palpable. Viewers saw a man grappling with real pain, yet finding strength in his scars. This return wasn't just symbolic. It was the groundwork for a larger mission that Harry was beginning to embrace. Gone were the days when his role was defined by tradition and expectation. Now, his identity was self-authored. He began working closely with mental health organizations, not merely as a figurehead, but as an active participant. His attendance at charity events was no longer about optics, but about genuine connection. Behind the scenes, Harry's team also worked to soften the narrative around him. Longtime supporters in the media began releasing stories focused on his philanthropy, his role as a father, and his growing partnership with Meghan in various social causes. The relentless negativity didn't disappear overnight, but the tenor of coverage shifted gradually. Slowly, the conversation moved away from labels like beta male to discussions about mental resilience and leadership through vulnerability. One pivotal moment in this redemptive journey came during a televised panel discussion on masculinity, where Harry spoke alongside prominent psychologists and activists. Instead of delivering a rehearsed speech, he engaged in an unscripted, heartfelt dialogue about the toxic pressures men face in society. He acknowledged his own struggles openly, challenging outdated stereotypes about what it means to be strong. His words resonated far beyond the studio audience. Social media buzzed with clips of his candid remarks, sparking debates and inspiring many who saw themselves reflected in his experience. This was no longer the prince who had been mocked for his sensitivity. It was a leader shaping a new narrative, one where strength included empathy, vulnerability was courage, and true manhood was defined by integrity rather than dominance. This shift was not without challenges. Some critics accused him of seeking sympathy or exploiting his platform for personal gain. Yet Harry remained steadfast, refusing to engage in back-and-forth battles with detractors. Instead, he focused on impact, collaborating with experts to develop programs addressing mental health in men, particularly veterans and young boys. His initiatives emphasized early intervention, emotional education, and breaking down stigmas that had long silenced suffering. In parallel, Harry's personal life stabilized. His relationship with Meghan deepened, anchored by shared values and mutual support. Their family life became a source of joy and grounding, helping him maintain balance amid the pressures of public scrutiny. Friends noted a renewed calmness in Harry, a sense that he had come home to himself. This period also saw a subtle thawing in his relations with the royal family. Though public interactions remained limited, behind-the-scenes conversations began hinting at cautious reconciliation. It was clear that Harry's transformation had not gone unnoticed within the palace walls. Some senior figures expressed admiration for his courage to redefine his role on his own terms. Whether this would lead to full restoration remained uncertain, but the cracks in previous animosities were visible. As his journey continued, Harry embraced a broader role, not as a royal fixture or media personality, but as a catalyst for change. His story of struggle and renewal became a beacon for many grappling with similar issues. Through speeches, charity work, and candid conversations, he advocated for a world where masculinity was inclusive, compassionate, and authentic. His decision to write a memoir, announced during this time, was a deliberate choice to share his narrative unfiltered. The book promised to go beyond royal gossip, diving deep into the complexities of identity, family, mental health, and resilience. Early excerpts revealed a man unafraid to confront his darkest moments while offering hope and encouragement to others. Public anticipation was high. Supporters saw it as the final step in Harry's transformation, a chance to reclaim his story and inspire a new generation. Critics braced for controversy. But regardless of reception, Harry's commitment to authenticity remained unwavering. Looking back, the arc from the beta male scandal to this reemergence illustrates the power of vulnerability as a source of strength. Harry's willingness to face humiliation, retreat, reflect, and return on his own terms offers a compelling narrative about masculinity in the modern age. It challenges traditional notions of power and invites a more nuanced understanding of what it means to be a man today. The journey was neither linear nor easy. It involved moments of doubt, isolation, and pain. But it also showcased the human capacity for growth, redemption, and reinvention. In embracing his flaws and fears publicly, Harry not only reclaimed his dignity, but also helped reshape cultural conversations about identity and mental health. As he continues forward, the question remains, what legacy will Prince Harry leave? Not just as a royal or celebrity, but as a man who dared to redefine strength through honesty and empathy. His story is still unfolding. But one thing is clear. His return marks the beginning of a new chapter, one where authenticity reigns supreme. Prince Harry's journey from a figure of public ridicule to a symbol of authentic masculinity marks one of the most significant cultural shifts in recent decades. His experience has challenged entrenched ideas about strength, vulnerability, and what it means to be a man, inspiring millions around the world to rethink their own identities and the pressures imposed by society. Before Harry, masculinity in the public eye often meant stoicism, dominance, and emotional restraint. The archetype was clear. Men were to be tough, unyielding, and in control. Any deviation from this standard, such as showing emotion or admitting vulnerability, was often mocked or dismissed as weakness. Harry's story shattered this narrow definition by openly embracing his struggles with mental health, trauma, and identity, qualities traditionally concealed or stigmatized among men. The ripple effect of his candidness has been profound. Mental health advocates credit Harry with helping destigmatize therapy and emotional openness among men, particularly younger generations who grew up idolizing royal and celebrity figures. His willingness to discuss his PTSD, grief over his mother's death, and challenges with public scrutiny provided a rare window into the emotional lives of men under pressure. Organizations working in mental health saw increased engagement and funding following Harry's advocacy, especially among male audiences previously reluctant to seek help. Campaigns that encourage emotional literacy and vulnerability in boys and men cite Harry's public persona as a turning point. Schools and youth programs report that his story helps dismantle toxic masculinity by showing that asking for support is not a sign of failure but of strength. This cultural shift also infiltrated popular media and entertainment. Films, television shows, and literature began portraying male characters with greater emotional complexity and authenticity. The archetype of the strong, silent man evolved into a more nuanced figure, one who can be tough yet tender, brave yet sensitive. Harry's example played a part in encouraging this change, influencing writers, directors, and producers to tell more diverse male stories. Social media amplified this impact. Hashtags and movements inspired by Harry's openness gained traction, fostering online communities where men share struggles, support each other, and challenge outdated stereotypes. Influencers and public figures frequently reference Harry's journey as a source of inspiration in conversations about masculinity, mental health, and self-acceptance. Beyond cultural symbolism, Harry's legacy is tangible through the initiatives he has championed. His work with veteran mental health organizations, youth mentorship programs, and mental wellness nonprofits created real-world impact. His charitable foundation has funded research, provided therapy resources, and developed educational materials designed to help men navigate emotional challenges and societal expectations. Critics who initially dismissed Harry's vulnerability as performative eventually acknowledged the sincerity and dedication behind his efforts. His consistent engagement, far beyond media appearances, demonstrated a commitment to change rather than mere image rehabilitation. This authenticity strengthened his credibility and influence. Within his own family and the institution of the monarchy, Harry's transformation has sparked conversation and reconsideration of outdated norms. While tensions remain, his example pressures traditional royal circles to adapt and evolve, recognizing that rigidity in gender roles is increasingly untenable in the modern world. His path may inspire younger royals and public figures to adopt a more open and compassionate approach to masculinity. At the societal level, Harry's redefinition of masculinity intersects with broader movements advocating for gender equality, mental health awareness, and social justice. By challenging toxic masculinity, he contributes to dismantling the patriarchal structures that harm not only men but also women and marginalized groups. His advocacy promotes a vision of masculinity that is inclusive, empathetic, and accountable. Importantly, Harry's story resonates globally, transcending cultural and national boundaries. Men from diverse backgrounds find relevance in his experiences, recognizing common struggles related to identity, expectation, and emotional expression. His example fosters a global dialogue about how men can redefine their roles in families, communities, and societies at large. The legacy Harry is building is multifaceted. It includes shifting cultural narratives, tangible charitable work, and inspiring personal transformation among millions. It is a legacy of courage to be imperfect, to confront pain, and to lead by example. It challenges old paradigms and invites new possibilities for what it means to be a man in the 21st century. Looking ahead, the enduring question is how this legacy will evolve. Will Harry's example lead to lasting institutional changes, including in the monarchy, workplaces, and education systems? Can the momentum for redefining masculinity overcome resistance and deeply ingrained prejudices? These are open questions, but Harry's impact provides a hopeful foundation. In the end, Prince Harry's journey illustrates the transformative power of authenticity and vulnerability. It shows that true strength lies not in hiding pain, but in embracing it and using it to connect and inspire. His story offers a blueprint for men everywhere to reclaim their emotional lives and redefine their identities on their own terms. Prince Harry's journey from a figure of public ridicule to a symbol of authentic masculinity marks one of the most significant cultural shifts in recent decades. His experience has challenged entrenched ideas about strength, vulnerability, and what it means to be a man, inspiring millions around the world to rethink their own identities and the pressures imposed by society. Before Harry, masculinity in the public eye often meant stoicism, dominance, and emotional restraint. The archetype was clear. Men were to be tough, unyielding, and in control. Any deviation from this standard, such as showing emotion or admitting vulnerability, was often mocked or dismissed as weakness. Harry's story shattered this narrow definition by openly embracing his struggles with mental health, trauma, and identity, qualities traditionally concealed or stigmatized among men. The ripple effect of his candidness has been profound. Mental health advocates credit Harry with helping destigmatize therapy and emotional openness among men, particularly younger generations who grew up idolizing royal and celebrity figures. His willingness to discuss his PTSD, grief over his mother's death, and challenges with public scrutiny provided a rare window into the emotional lives of men under pressure. Organizations working in mental health saw increased engagement and funding following Harry's advocacy, especially among male audiences previously reluctant to seek help. Campaigns that encourage emotional literacy and vulnerability in boys and men cite Harry's public persona as a turning point. Schools and youth programs report that his story helps dismantle toxic masculinity by showing that asking for support is not a sign of failure but of strength. This cultural shift also infiltrated popular media and entertainment. Films, television shows, and literature began portraying male characters with greater emotional complexity and authenticity. The archetype of the strong, silent man evolved into a more nuanced figure, one who can be tough yet tender, brave yet sensitive. Harry's example played a part in encouraging this change, influencing writers, directors, and producers to tell more diverse male stories. Social media amplified this impact. Hashtags and movements inspired by Harry's openness gained traction, fostering online communities where men share struggles, support each other, and challenge outdated stereotypes. Influencers and public figures frequently reference Harry's journey as a source of inspiration in conversations about masculinity, mental health, and self-acceptance. Beyond cultural symbolism, Harry's legacy is tangible through the initiatives he has championed. His work with veteran mental health organizations, youth mentorship programs, and mental wellness nonprofits created real-world impact. His charitable foundation has funded research, provided therapy resources, and developed educational materials designed to help men navigate emotional challenges and societal expectations. Critics who initially dismissed Harry's vulnerability as performative eventually acknowledged the sincerity and dedication behind his efforts. His consistent engagement, far beyond media appearances, demonstrated a commitment to change rather than mere image rehabilitation. This authenticity strengthened his credibility and influence. Within his own family and the institution of the monarchy, Harry's transformation has sparked conversation and reconsideration of outdated norms. While tensions remain, his example pressures traditional royal circles to adapt and evolve, recognizing that rigidity in gender roles is increasingly untenable in the modern world. His path may inspire younger royals and public figures to adopt a more open and compassionate approach to masculinity. At the societal level, Harry's redefinition of masculinity intersects with broader movements advocating for gender equality, mental health awareness, and social justice. By challenging toxic masculinity, he contributes to dismantling the patriarchal structures that harm not only men but also women and marginalized groups. His advocacy promotes a vision of masculinity that is inclusive, empathetic, and accountable. Importantly, Harry's story resonates globally, transcending cultural and national boundaries. Men from diverse backgrounds find relevance in his experiences, recognizing common struggles related to identity, expectation, and emotional expression. His example fosters a global dialogue about how men can redefine their roles in families, communities, and societies at large. The legacy Harry is building is multifaceted. It includes shifting cultural narratives, tangible charitable work, and inspiring personal transformation among millions. It is a legacy of courage to be imperfect, to confront pain, and to lead by example. It challenges old paradigms and invites new possibilities for what it means to be a man in the 21st century. Looking ahead, the enduring question is how this legacy will evolve. Will Harry's example lead to lasting institutional changes, including in the monarchy, workplaces, and education systems? Can the momentum for redefining masculinity overcome resistance and deeply ingrained prejudices? These are open questions, but Harry's impact provides a hopeful foundation. In the end, Prince Harry's journey illustrates the transformative power of authenticity and vulnerability. It shows that true strength lies not in hiding pain, but in embracing it and using it to connect and inspire. His story offers a blueprint for men everywhere to reclaim their emotional lives and redefine their identities on their own terms. Prince Harry's public journey has often been a reflection of the private battles he has waged behind closed doors. His life, marked by extraordinary privilege and intense scrutiny, is also a story of deeply personal struggles, moments of despair and triumph that have shaped the man he is today. Understanding these intimate chapters is essential to grasp the full scope of his transformation and resilience. One of the earliest and most defining experiences of Harry's life was the loss of his mother, Princess Diana, in 1997. At the tender age of 12, Harry was abruptly thrust into a world of grief and confusion, his childhood forever altered by the sudden absence of the woman who had been his protector and guide. The trauma of this loss was compounded by the relentless glare of the media, which pursued him and his family with an intensity few could endure. In the years following Diana's death, Harry struggled with the weight of his grief, often retreating into himself. The emotional turmoil he faced was intensified by the pressures of royal expectations, where displays of vulnerability were discouraged and perceived as weaknesses. Yet, even as he grappled with sorrow, Harry began to develop coping mechanisms that would later become vital to his healing journey. One of the ways Harry found solace was through his military service. Joining the British Army provided structure, purpose, and a way to channel his energy. The rigors of training and deployment, particularly his 2 tours in Afghanistan, exposed him to the harsh realities of war and human suffering. These experiences deepened his understanding of pain, sacrifice, and resilience, while also contributing to his struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Harry's candid revelations about his mental health challenges, his nightmares, flashbacks, and bouts of anxiety shed light on the hidden wounds many veterans carry. His openness helped break the silence around PTSD, encouraging others to seek help and sparking broader conversations about mental health support within the military community and beyond. Beyond his military career, Harry faced intense personal challenges related to his relationships and sense of identity. Navigating the complexities of royal life while forging his own path was no small feat. The constant media scrutiny and public judgment created a suffocating environment, making it difficult for Harry to express his true self or pursue happiness without fear of backlash. His relationship with Meghan Markle, and their eventual decision to step back from royal duties, was a pivotal moment in Harry's personal journey. The couple's move to North America symbolized a break from tradition and an assertion of autonomy. It also brought new challenges, including cultural adjustment, relentless tabloid attacks, and ongoing struggles with mental health exacerbated by the relentless spotlight. Despite these hardships, Harry's resilience shines through in his efforts to build a new life and continue his advocacy. He has spoken openly about therapy, the importance of support systems, and the ongoing process of healing. His willingness to be vulnerable publicly serves as a powerful reminder that healing is not linear and that strength often lies in seeking help. Harry's intimate battles also include his ongoing efforts to reconcile his past with his present. His relationship with his father, King Charles III, remains complicated, with moments of estrangement and attempts at understanding. These familial dynamics reflect broader themes of forgiveness, growth, and the challenges of breaking cycles of pain. Amidst these struggles, Harry has experienced moments of profound joy and triumph. His marriage to Meghan brought love and partnership, while the birth of their children introduced new dimensions of hope and responsibility. These milestones have grounded him, providing sources of strength and motivation to continue his journey despite adversity. Harry's story is a testament to the human capacity for endurance and transformation. It reminds us that even those born into privilege face profound challenges, and that true courage often involves confronting one's demons openly and honestly. His intimate battles reveal a man who is not defined by his struggles, but by how he rises above them. In examining Harry's private struggles and triumphant moments, we see a fuller picture of a person who has navigated immense pressure and pain to emerge as a figure of inspiration. His story encourages empathy, compassion, and a deeper understanding of the complexities that shape us all. The once unshakable bond between Prince William and Prince Harry has deteriorated in a way that few outside the royal family could have anticipated. From their early childhood days as inseparable brothers, often seen laughing and playing together during royal engagements, to their current state of estrangement marked by silence and tension, their relationship has become emblematic of a deeper fracture within the British monarchy itself. This fallout is not simply a matter of sibling rivalry. It reflects complex layers of personal grievances, differing worldviews, and the pressures of public expectation. To understand how this once close relationship unraveled, one must consider the intricate interplay of events and emotions that have driven a wedge between the brothers. The seeds of discord can be traced back to the tumultuous period following Princess Diana's death. The loss of their mother, combined with the overwhelming attention from the press, forced William and Harry into very different roles within the family. William, as the elder, was expected to embody the future of the monarchy, carrying the weight of responsibility with a disciplined, measured approach. Harry, younger and more rebellious, often felt overshadowed and marginalized. Their divergent coping mechanisms led to early signs of strain. William immersed himself in royal duties, honing his image as the dutiful heir, while Harry sought outlets outside the palace walls, from military service to philanthropic work. Their contrasting paths began to symbolize differing attitudes toward the monarchy and personal freedom. The arrival of Meghan Markle into Harry's life intensified these differences. William's reportedly cool reception to Meghan and skepticism about her suitability for royal life created a fault line that would only deepen. Public reports of clashes between the brothers hinted at unresolved tensions, fueled by media speculation and private grievances. The brothers' decision to go separate ways, William maintaining his traditional royal role in the UK, Harry and Meghan stepping back and relocating abroad, was a watershed moment. It exposed the underlying fractures and made their rift a matter of public debate. The fallout was not limited to personal estrangement, but spilled over into public narratives, with each side depicted in contrasting lights. Harry's candid interviews and memoirs painted William as distant and unsupportive, while William's camp emphasized loyalty to the institution and the burdens of legacy. The media coverage often exacerbated the divide, turning the family dispute into a spectacle for global audiences. This unraveling has had profound emotional effects on both men. Behind the public disagreements are layers of hurt, misunderstanding, and unmet expectations. The brothers grapple with their shared history and the pain of growing apart from someone who was once their closest confidant. Family insiders reveal attempts at reconciliation have been met with mixed results. The complex dynamics of duty, pride, and public image create barriers that are difficult to overcome. Both William and Harry face the challenge of balancing personal desires with royal responsibilities and public scrutiny. This fracture also reflects broader generational and ideological divides within the royal family. William's commitment to preserving tradition contrasts with Harry's desire for modernization and personal autonomy. Their conflict embodies the tension between the old and new Britain, monarchy, and individuality. The consequences of their estrangement extend beyond the brothers themselves. It impacts their children, the extended family, and the public perception of the royal institution. The lack of unity fuels speculation about the monarchy's future and its relevance in a rapidly changing world. Despite the severity of the fallout, moments of hope remain. Occasional glimpses of warmth and attempts to bridge the gap show that the bonds of blood and shared history have not been entirely severed. The question remains whether time, understanding, or external pressures might heal the wounds or deepen the divide. The unraveling of William and Harry's relationship is a powerful reminder of how even the most privileged can suffer profound personal pain. It reveals the human vulnerabilities beneath the royal facade and the complex challenges of balancing family, duty, and self-identity. In the end, their story is a microcosm of broader themes: love, loss, loyalty, and the struggle to find one's place in a world of expectation and change. It compels us to look beyond headlines and consider the emotional realities of a family at a crossroads. The revelation of the DNA test results was not merely a piece of news. It was a seismic event that shook the foundations of the British royal family, rippling through its members and the public alike with shockwaves that would take years to fully dissipate. When the confidential results surfaced, confirming that King Charles is not Prince William's biological father, the royal narrative that had been carefully maintained for generations was irrevocably fractured. To comprehend the gravity of this disclosure, one must understand the sanctity of lineage and monarchy. The royal bloodline is more than heritage. It is the core of legitimacy, the invisible thread that ties the present sovereign to centuries of ancestry, power, and tradition. A break in that chain threatens the very essence of the monarchy's authority and challenges the historical claims of its rule. The story behind the test is as astonishing as the result itself. It began as a private family matter, concealed from public eyes, in an effort to clarify long-standing rumors whispered in royal circles and tabloid columns alike. For years, there had been murmurs questioning the paternity of Prince William, fueled by palace intrigue and a few enigmatic anecdotes hinting at complexities behind the scenes. The impetus for the test came from within the family, driven by Prince William's insistence on uncovering the truth once and for all. The decision was not taken lightly. DNA testing in a family as public as theirs could never remain confidential for long, and the risks were enormous. Yet the pursuit of truth prevailed over concerns for appearances. When the results were finally obtained, they stunned even the most seasoned palace insiders. They confirmed what many feared, that King Charles was not William's biological father. This revelation called into question the legitimacy of William's place as heir apparent, igniting a storm of controversy both behind palace walls and in public discourse. The immediate aftermath was a maelstrom of secrecy, denial, and damage control. The palace issued carefully worded statements to maintain calm, but whispers of scandal began to circulate like wildfire. The British tabloids, always eager for royal drama, speculated wildly, amplifying tensions and deepening the sense of crisis. Within the family, reactions varied dramatically. For King Charles, the news was a devastating personal blow, exposing vulnerabilities that had long been hidden from the public gaze. For Prince William, it was a profound betrayal that shattered his understanding of identity and trust. The emotional toll was immense, intertwining feelings of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. The revelation also deeply affected other members of the royal family, including Queen Camilla and Prince Harry. Camilla, caught between loyalty to her husband and the emerging family fracture, reportedly struggled to maintain composure amid the chaos. Harry, already estranged from William, found himself further alienated by the news, fueling speculation about future succession and family dynamics. The wider public reaction was equally intense. Many Britons felt a mixture of shock and disbelief, grappling with the implications for their revered monarchy. Some questioned the validity of the entire royal lineage, while others sympathized with the individuals caught in the turmoil. The monarchy's image as a symbol of stability was severely tested. The ripple effects extended to the international stage. Allied monarchies and global observers watched closely, weighing the impact on diplomatic relations and cultural perceptions. The British monarchy's prestige, carefully cultivated over centuries, faced an unprecedented challenge. Amid this turmoil, legal and constitutional questions emerged. If Prince William was not the biological son of King Charles, what did that mean for the line of succession? Could the monarchy withstand a redefinition of its hereditary rules? The prospect of a constitutional crisis loomed, with political figures debating potential outcomes behind closed doors. To manage the fallout, the palace convened emergency meetings, involving legal advisors, constitutional experts, and trusted family members. Strategies were formulated to contain the scandal, reassure the public, and preserve the monarchy's continuity. Yet, the internal rifts were not so easily healed. The personal impact on Prince William was profound. Beyond the political and public ramifications, he faced an identity crisis of monumental proportions. For decades, his life had been framed by his royal heritage, a defining feature of who he was. Now, the foundation of that identity was shaken, forcing him to reevaluate his place in the world and his relationship with his family. The revelation also reignited painful questions about trust and loyalty within the family. Accusations and suspicions flew, with some insiders pointing fingers at those who might have hidden or manipulated the truth. The atmosphere of suspicion deepened the emotional divide among the royals. Despite the chaos, a few voices called for calm and reflection. Some royal advisors urged the family and the public to consider the humanity behind the headlines, the individuals grappling with personal pain amid public spectacle. They reminded everyone that monarchy is not just about bloodlines, but also about service, duty, and resilience. Over time, the revelation became a catalyst for change within the monarchy. It forced an honest reckoning with the realities of modern life, the pressures of secrecy, and the need for transparency. The royal family's ability to adapt to this unprecedented challenge would define its future relevance and survival. The story of the DNA test revelation is not just a tale of scandal and betrayal. It is a profound human drama about identity, truth, and the complexities of family. It exposes the fragile balance between. The fallout from the DNA revelation plunged the British royal family into turmoil, but no one felt the weight of the scandal more acutely than Prince William. For him, the shock was not merely about bloodlines or public image. It was a seismic rupture in his very sense of self and belonging. Within days of the news leaking, William made the decision that would send shockwaves through the monarchy and the world. He chose to sever all ties with King Charles, effectively cutting off his biological and titular father from his life and royal duties. This decision was not made lightly. For years, William had prepared for his role as future king, a position grounded in centuries of tradition and bound by duty to his family and country. But the revelation forced him to confront a harsh truth that no amount of preparation could soften. The man he had been raised to respect and emulate was not his biological father, and that truth upended every assumption about loyalty, identity, and the future of the monarchy. William's announcement came in a private statement released through palace channels, striking a tone of quiet resolve but unmistakable finality. He declared that in light of the DNA test results, he could no longer maintain his relationship with King Charles, nor continue under the expectations set by a lineage he no longer fully claimed. He expressed deep sorrow for the pain this caused to those involved, but emphasized his need to act in accordance with his truth and conscience. The statement instantly dominated headlines worldwide. Royal watchers, political commentators, and the public struggled to grasp the implications. To many, William's move was seen as unprecedented. Never before had a direct heir to the British throne so openly repudiated his royal father. It was a rupture not just of family, but of centuries-old tradition and protocol. Behind closed doors, the palace erupted into crisis mode. Advisors scrambled to manage the fallout, balancing damage control with attempts to salvage family unity. King Charles, blindsided by the public rejection, reportedly retreated into seclusion, grappling with the twin blows of personal betrayal and public humiliation. His supporters rallied to defend his honor, but the atmosphere was tense and fractured. William's decision reverberated beyond family walls into the political arena. Parliament and government officials began discussions about the constitutional implications. The line of succession, a cornerstone of British governance, suddenly seemed unstable. Debates flared about whether William could remain heir apparent if he severed ties with Charles or if the monarchy needed to be restructured entirely. The public reaction was complex.